Well, hello and welcome to an interview with Diana Mrozinski from Stevens Point, Wisconsin. She has been very gracious to say she will go along with one of these interviews. So I'm anxious because I have not uh, ever met Diana before. And so I'm anxious to hear her story. And I'm sure it's going to be very interesting. So we're just going to start with the first question, Diana, which is tell me about your religious upbringing.
Well, my father's family was in the church since before the Restoration. So I have been raised in the church since birth. My mother was not, um, my mother was, if you can call it even raised Catholic, and then she was baptized when I was a very small girl. We were living in Chicago, Illinois, and at first we were attending, well, it was the first Chicago branch, and we attended church in a YWCA until the church building was built.
Okay.
Um, so I've been in the church forever. My mother was woman's leader forever, and I sort of think that that church wouldn't have been a church without my mother because she's a dynamo, was a dynamo. Um, I played piano. I was in whatever they needed. I was good at memorizing stuff. So if they had something that they needed somebody to read or say, that was me. I went to camps and Bible school and whatever, everything.
So, so I would say that was a pretty stable start to your religious life and a
Yes.
pretty busy one as well. So that probably answers my second question, which is what was your first interaction with the church? Um, it was probably before you even can remember, I'm guessing.
Yes, pretty much so.
Can you tell me a little bit about the camps that you attended and maybe Vacation Bible School or any of that in that Chicago area?
The camp was in Michigan,
Oh,
and it was called boy, was it Moroni or
but you traveled all the way to Michigan for your
yeah, that's
camps.
where the camp was. Usually there was a group of us or something or another. Um, that was the only place that I remember going to, but it had I can't think, gosh, that was so long ago. I can't remember what the name of the
That's
camp was.
okay.
Yeah, but yeah, that was in Bible school. My mother was was in charge most of the time, so we were there
Sure.
early and stayed late. I remember going to a Jewish synagogue and to a Muslim um, mosque.
Mosque.
Um,
Mhm.
we had, all sorts of activities, and there generally were a lot of children. And I had some very good friends within the church. Not anyone that I saw outside of church, but at church, and at the camps and stuff. Um, but we did all sorts of things. And at the end of the Bible school, there usually was some kind of a performance or play or something to wrap the whole thing
Sure.
up. And one time it rained. My cousin and I had gone, and my mother and my aunt and my little cousin, and it rained so hard we couldn't get home because we had to go
Oh,
under a viaduct. There were well, this was before interstates and that kind of thing.
sure.
You had viaducts you had to go under, and they were flooded. So we spent the night huddled in the car in the parking lot of a motel until the water receded.
Oh my
And my
goodness.
father was just on the other side of the viaduct, trying to see if he could find us or get to us or whatever. Well, he couldn't.
And that's way before cell phones. So there was
Oh,
probably a lot of worry going back and forth.
yeah. It was probably in the 50s, in the
Yeah.
1950s.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's memorable. That's for
Oh
sure.
yeah, yeah. My cousin and I both remember that. I mean, and the things that were going on in this parking lot. Well, it was Chicago, it was big city. It was
Oh,
just, you know.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Well, and then you said that you were not in Chicago, well, that you eventually moved up to Wisconsin. So
Yes.
as a teenager, can you
Yes,
talk
to
a little?
start high school. My father was very ill and he no longer could work. My grandfather was ill, and he said if we came and lived with him and took care of him in the house and whatever, he would pay the bills. And that was a, re a reasonable expectation. Um, and my parents did not want me to be going to a high school in Chicago back in the early 60s. That was not a good time. And so we moved to Stanley, Wisconsin, which was not too far from Eau Claire. And eventually we began to go to the Eau Claire church.
Okay.
And from there, I mean, from that, we used to go up to St. Paul or Minneapolis to the church for youth events and whatever. And so, I've been around the Midwest and I I know a lot of people that are in the Mission Center. Um, a lot of them are probably gone by now too,
Mm.
but I'm not a newcomer to this area.
Okay. Very, very interesting. And now you say that you are joining Milwaukee Wauwatosa congregation often through Zoom.
Yes, every week. During when the pandemic started, we always go down in the spring to visit friends in Milwaukee, and often well, when I didn't have Wisconsin Rapids to go to, I would go to the Milwaukee Wauwatosa Church. And then after the pandemic closed everything down, then Bill Siegfried, the pastor in Milwaukee, sent me a note saying, "Why don't you Zoom in?" And that was in April of 2020. It's almost 5 years, and I preach and do whatever I can from long distance. We don't get up down there very often, still in the spring. And usually then I will preach from the pulpit, which is much better than Zoom, but Zoom is better than nothing. And I might get down there for a business meeting or a few other events at the church, but it's a 3 hour drive,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
so
Uh,
it's a little hard. But if you ask anybody there, I'm a known quantity.
Yeah. That's good to know. That's a nice way to put it. Um, and we have all been blessed with Zoom, especially during the pandemic and beyond. And it's wonderful that you can join them that way. As you were mentioning, the was it called Wisconsin Rapids
Yes.
Church? Okay. And that closed a decade ago, maybe, or
Oh no, in the 1990s,
okay, longer. Okay.
maybe 95, 96.
Yeah.
We didn't have all we were doing was keeping the lights on. We
Yeah.
didn't have the money or the resources to do anything outreach or whatever.
Hmm.
And there was quite a bit of dissension as to what we should do, so we just gave it up. Then a group
Yeah.
of us did meet once a month in the homes. We would rotate and we'd have a service and then we'd have lunch and then we'd play games or do something or whatever. But that worked. And then we moved in 2004, we moved to Cody, Wyoming when we retired. And then I was attached to the Cody Powell Church. And we only
Oh,
stayed there 4 years and then we moved back to Stevens Point because this is where my husband is from and this is where I went to college. So,
okay. Well, very interesting. So, can you share one or two testimonies that are special to you about God's blessings or direction or
oh,
influence?
if that's a long list. I guess one of my top things is that God gave me my husband, that he's not a member of the church, but he is very faith-based. He's very Christian. He's probably the best friend that the church has. And I really believe he's made me a better person because he's kind and he just he just exudes calmness and whatever. And I can be a little bit. feisty, to use a nice word. And but even with my father was very ill, and he had some terrible episodes, and I always felt that God was telling me um, that he will never suffer more than he can take. And when he no longer can take the pain and whatever, then I'll take him. And that's exactly what he did. And part of that was he died shortly before we were married, but I think he hung on until I had Richard, and then he knew he could go, that I was going to be well taken care of. And I have for 56 years.
56 years. That's a beautiful testimony to of God's direction, and also of a beautiful marriage, it sounds like. So that's fabulous. Thank you. So, what do you think Community of Christ should be doing? What
Well,
should the church do?
the community of Christ should be involved in the environment. There's no other church religion that really believes that God's world needs to be taken care of. And I think they need to do everything possible to get that word out there and to make people believe that every day should be Earth Day. We shouldn't celebrate it just once a day, once a year, but every day. And that God created a beautiful world for us, and we are destroying it. The birds and animals and things that we have lost, and human development is wound up with nature. We need the clean air, the clean water. Um, we need that for our mental health, our physical health, and um, and I think our church is in the forefront of that movement. Way back with Richard Waugh and
Yes.
um, and things. I used to go to the some of the junior high camps out at well, here again, I can't think of the name of the
In
camp.
the in this area or
Yes,
the Wisconsin?
In Adams
Okay.
County, um, and do environmental workshops, different things with the kids and whatever. And I think that's just so important. And one of my in an article that was in the Saints Herald in 1996 by Helen Bruck Pearson. She says, no longer can the future of religion be separated from the future of the world, for they are inextricably bound to one another. There's only one world with one future, and it is a shared future. And we, I think we need to do, because that's a Christ mission, that's God's mission, and we need to, and with the enduring principles, the worth of all people, without clean air and water and animals and birds and trees and all that life, we're not doing what we need to be doing.
We have a stewardship responsibility. And I'm just going to take a moment. I'm guessing that you may not have known, but last summer, our reunion was all about environment, and Rich Waugh was teaching the adult class. It was
Yes,
fabulous.
yes, and I
And
was not able to get there. That was just not possible.
well,
But yes.
I do know there's an Earth Day service coming up. It will be announced. Do you get the newsletter
Oh
that
yes.
comes out? Okay. It will be in the newsletter as to when, and it's going to be on Earth Day. So it will be on that too. I believe it's a Tuesday, and they will send out the Zoom link. And Murray Barentine has put the service together, and he worked a lot on the reunion last year with all of the environmental things.
Hmm.
So I will keep you in mind the next time we have a book club, which is talking about environment, because we've had a couple of those that Murray has led. So, and I know that the upcoming World Conference has either one or two resolutions also about the environment, about fossil fuels, and those kinds of things. So
And
And
right now it's critical because our government has said it doesn't exist.
yeah, yeah. So my next question is, how do you think that we can share the gospel?
That's a tough question because, with the Milwaukee church, we are so spread out, obviously. Um, so, if people don't come into the church, we have a hard time telling them. And then for everybody in their little, I mean, we're so spread out.
Yeah.
Um, I think the best way is how you live and how you respond to people and the things that you do, and not to be afraid to say, well, I'll pray for you because your husband is ill or your daughter is ill, or I'll pray for you while you're on your trip, or not being afraid um, to exude Christ. Um, and I don't, and there may not be just community of Christ, but it's Christian. And I know in the years that I worked with my friends and stuff, as we had traumas and tragedies and whatever, that kind of thing, um, I think helps. And we need to just keep doing what we can in our own little space. And I don't know, other than that,
I think
we
you said it all when you said we need to exude, we need to live that life that we claim. And there's a lot of so-called Christians spewing a lot of words out there, but the actions aren't quite living up to it. And if we can
know.
live up to what we claim to believe and who we claim to follow, I think you're exactly right. Show it in our everyday life. That's not always easy.
No, no, it isn't. But um, we need to try to our very best. And God will certainly help us and give us opportunities. Um, you know, you you just have to keep your eyes open and your ears open, and it's surprising the things that you can, um, ways that you can help or say things, and not be ashamed or scared to say things or embarrassed. Um,
It's almost like the mission prayer. God, where will you send me today? What do I need to risk? Help me to be able to do that.
yes.
And that's something to think about every day. And I think you're right. God's going to put those opportunities in front of us.
Yes, and you don't have to accept all of them, but you can't refuse all of them either.
Right, right. My next question is, who do you think was most influential in your church life, or who has been? Maybe still
Well, I'd
is.
have to say some of the Sunday school teachers I had growing up in Chicago, Alice Skinner, Earl Lehman, Elbert Chandler, who baptized me. And then when I was in Cody, Frank Young, and here in Rapids and area, Lillian Jacobs. But I think the one who has made my life in the church as fruitful as it has been is my husband. Even though he's not Community of Christ, he's very faith-based, he's very Christian, and he has been a wonderful support. He's never said no. He's always made it possible for me to have the time to prepare a lesson or a sermon or taking me to the camps or down to Milwaukee or whatever I need doing. And even though we're not the same religion, we probably share more faith in similar ways than people who are the same religion. And he's probably the best friend the church has. And I've never asked him to become a community of Christ because I'm not sure that it would make him a better person.
Exactly. Oh, that is perfect. Wonderful answer. So, what do you feel is most important for people who are going to watch this to know about you? What would you like to share about yourself?
Well, I'm not shy.
That's
I
good.
I'm not afraid to get up in front of a group of people, and as long as I know what I'm talking about, I'm not afraid, and I'm not someone who sits back. If I see a need, if I see something that needs doing, I will offer. I've been financial officer in Wisconsin Rapids for years. I was in Cody because they needed someone. Um, I've taught baptismal classes, adult classes, children's classes. I preach here in Milwaukee. I preach regularly, and most of the time on Zoom. Um, and I do what I just, I'm more than willing to put myself out there. One little story. When I graduated from kindergarten to first grade, I got up in front of this, and it was a big school because it was in Chicago. I mean, it wasn't, 50 kids. It was probably 200, 300 kids and their parents. I got up on the stage and did teddy bear, turn around, teddy bear, touch the ground, teddy bear, but the whole thing, and then teddy bear, say good night. And I was 6 years old.
I'm sorry, I'm getting a coughing fit right now, and I don't want to cough in the middle of this, but oh my goodness. Well, obviously, from you have it built into your DNA to share vocally and however you can. So
Yes.
that's very obvious, and that's so important. There's a lot of people who attend church in person regularly and cannot seem to muster the courage to speak very much or to share their testimonies. And I just very much appreciate you sharing. And if there's anything else that you think would be helpful on this, um, go ahead and tell me now before we close our recording.
Two things. Church is more about sitting in the pew. Church is about community. About you need the church to build, to keep your faith strong, to keep you on track, to help you and guide you and pray for you just as you pray for them. Community is important. And the second thing is the one thing growing up in the church that I always felt was the most valuable, it made me a nonconformist. I was not going to do the things that the other kids do because my church had, if you want to call them rules or tenets or whatever, as to how we should behave. And I I've I've always followed that. Um, you can't, it's very hard to get me to do something I really don't want. Not that I don't sin and do things I shouldn't, but you're not going to make me do something I don't want to do.
Good for you. That's a very wonderful lesson for all of us to learn. So you might see my head down a lot. I've been taking notes. I'm not sure why I do that because it's all going to be recorded, but it just kind of helps me also as I remember and look back at these interviews, as I call them, or testimonies. So again, I thank you very much. And we are going to be staying in touch. And as soon as we, again, find the landing spot for these testimonies, we're going to let everybody know. So thank you again, Diana, so very much. I've really appreciated.
Oh, well, you're welcome. And thank you for doing this.